Hello and welcome to the Jamie and Stephen Show. Let's talk movies, music and magic. This week's episode is a bonus one, a celebration of the life and career of one of Disney's most successful musical duos, Howard Ashman and Alan Menken. They're the reason this era is called the Renaissance and a significant part of why it was, and to some, still the best era of Disney animated movies. Returning to the podcast, my sister Holly's here.
Hello, everybody. I'm back.
Yes, unfortunately, Stephen could not join us this week. So it's just us sisters.
There were never such devoted sisters.
Oh, right. So you are done your research on Menken, and I've done mine on Howard Ashman. So, without further ado, I'll start with Howard.
Yes, let's go.
Okay. So, a native of Baltimore, born on the 17th of May, 1950. So, if he was still alive now, he would be 75.
Yeah.
Yeah, 75 this year. His mother was a semi-professional singer. So I think before she had the children, like she was doing things on TV or radio and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like really into the music. Apparently his dad tried to, find something of interest for them both. However, he had to sort of accept that his son was more into creative things and had a love of music and had a great imagination, always putting on performances. And apparently he saw a production that involved children when he was 6. And he said to his mom, "Oh, Mom, that's what I want to do. I want to do that." So she got him into Children's Theatre Association through contacts that she had. And it started from there. So he would go on and, really get into creative writing and acting. Apparently, as a hobby, he would constantly write just musical things about anything on a shopping list or just stuff like that. Yeah, went to Boston University and then to Goddard, which was a hippie university. Didn't have grades or anything like that. Very bohemian. And it was very experimental. So he got really into that and like offbeat theatre there. And this is where he met his first love, Stuart White. His nickname was Snooze. And it was at a theatre camp one of the summers. So I think it was like during the Goddard part.
Mm-hmm.
And Stuart was also from Baltimore, but they never ran into each other. They became a secret couple. Stuart was passionate about directing, and they both went to graduate school together in Indiana and lived together. And then they moved to New York in 1974. So obviously, once they graduated and they realized what they wanted to do, obviously go into theatre. Broadway was the place.
Yeah.
Doing auditions and trying to write your own plays and whatnot. Like there was no money in that. And they needed steady jobs. So Ashman got into publishing. I think it was through his writing. And he became like an editor and was assigned to edit the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse scrapbook.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. It's like foreshadowing the future. It's weird. And he always loved Disney, always been a fan. So when he got that job, he was over the moon. And he was sent to California to do the project. And like I've seen a photo of him leaning against a gate in front of the opening of Disneyland, like the entrance to Disneyland.
Wow.
Yeah. But that wasn't obviously what he wanted to do. He wanted to write his own stuff and direct theatre productions. So him and Stuart and a group of friends that they had that were all into the theatre started their own theatre in a loft in 1977. Kyle Kinnick, or Rinick, I can't read my writing. He was the managing director of the theatre. Howard and Stewart shared the duties of artistic director. However, Stewart, unfortunately, was very self-destructive. He was heavily drinking, experimenting with drugs, experimenting with sex. He had various lovers. Yeah, it wasn't Howard's thing. That wasn't what he was interested in, and that wasn't the kind of relationship he wanted. I mean, apparently this Stuart didn't even have a paid job. Like he never got a paid job. So he was relying on whatever income Ashman brought in, by the sounds of it. Anyway, so they obviously broke up. Like he wasn't putting up with that. That wasn't the kind of partner he wanted. Yeah, so their relationship ended, which did have an effect on their group of friends because they were all friends together. They all met together. However, Stuart chose to leave and try to go on his own, but it went a bit further from what I was reading, but obviously because it's not about him. But yeah, apparently he got a lot of no's. Now at this point, which is where you come in,
Yeah.
is when Alan Menken comes into Howard's life through a mutual acquaintance.
Yes. So a little bit of background
Yeah.
on Alan Menken. He's from Manhattan
Okay.
and was born to Judith, and doesn't really say much about what his mother did other than she was an actress, a dancer, a playwright as well, but hasn't really mentioned anything that she's been in or done. But his father was a dentist, but a boogie woogie piano playing dentist. So
Okay.
yeah, they were a Jewish family, living in the heart of New York, and was heavily brought up around music, both by the love from his mum and from his dad. From the age of 9, he was playing in music clubs and was entering, composing contests. So the love of music was there from like day one. But
Yeah.
he did go down the pre-med road,
Oh,
um,
okay.
out of respect for his mum and dad.
Okay.
But music was his calling.
Yeah.
He was just like, no, this is what I want to be. I
Mhm.
either want to be a rock star or like I want to work for Disney, basically. Like that
Yeah.
was what was in his head. That was what he wanted to do. He says how he struggled to focus in his studies, but he could focus on music.
Right.
And that was the one thing he could focus on. He even describes himself, at school as being very ADD, which obviously wasn't something that kids got diagnosed with back then.
No.
And I don't think it's something that he's ever pursued in being diagnosed with. But in an interview that I watched called Theatre Talk on YouTube, which is really good, by the way, have to tune into that.
Okay.
He does describe himself as being very ADD at school. So once he'd left, doing the whole pre-med thing, he joined a group called BMI. So I needed to find out what this BMI was because it had actually been mentioned in quite a few things that I'd watched with him, but didn't really know what it was. So BMI stands for Broadcast Music Inc. So it distributes money to composers, music, songwriters, and publishers. And he met a lot of people through this. He actually said that it was Fantasia that made him want to be a composer.
Oh my God.
Loved Fantasia. And that was the movie that was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. This is what I
Yeah.
need to do. And another little bit of backstory about his family life. His niece went to school with Lopez, the guy, the one half of Frozen,
Oh my God.
and Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Oh
So
my God.
Lin-Manuel Miranda and what's
Lopez.
Lopez's first name? I've written it somewhere, but I can't find it. And Menken's niece all went to school together, but in like different years.
Okay.
And they found out who Menken's niece was and was like, hey, Menken's niece, any chance like you can put in a good word for us? And she went back to her uncle, and Menken was like, tell them to join BMI.
Uh-huh.
And they did. And
Wow.
that is where Lopez met Kirsten Anderson,
His wife.
his wife. And then they got married. So he's got, a few things to do with the
Yeah.
future writers
Uh-huh.
and composers of some of our future favorite Disney films.
Yeah.
So yeah, so again, he was doing sort of a lot of random stuff for like TV, did a bit of work with Sesame Street,
Uh-huh.
which him and Howard then actually when they met tried to get in to Sesame Street together as
Okay.
a duo, but it didn't really work out. But Menken was already doing some bits for them, and again found this mutual contact who was like, wait a minute, you're not saying that you're not good at, being a lyricist, but I have somebody that I think you would work really well with. And I
Yeah.
think the two of you could be really good together. And like before this, he'd even actually been sent over to London to write songs with Elton John.
Ooh, Mencken.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So like he'd been around and he
Uh-huh.
had been meeting people and he had been in contact with people. Yeah, him and he actually plays the song on this theatre talk. He wrote a song with Elton John called Measure of a Man. And when he
Okay.
plays it, you're like, oh my God, that's like so Elton John. But yeah, so like I say, came across this guy and he was like, I think I know somebody that you might like.
Yeah.
And I think you two are going to make magical things together.
Yeah. Her name's Maury Yeaston.
So they meet,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
So they're now together. And they do have I written it down, the
Yeah. Is it
play.
God bless you? God bless you, Mr. Rosewater.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they get the rights to do that. And it's not very successful,
No.
unfortunately. So Howard had actually seen the original Little Shop of Horrors,
Yeah.
which I tried to watch, believe it or not, because I'm
Okay.
just so dedicated.
Yeah.
And
No.
yeah, Jack Nicholson's in it.
I
It's
know.
like
I know. He's in the dentist chair.
he's in the dentist chair, so he's playing the part that Bill Murray ends up playing in the movie musical adaptation that obviously we end up getting to.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so Howard loved it and was like, I need to get the rights to this film because I've got a really good idea. And
Mhm.
Menken's like, yeah, like, let's do it.
Little shop, little shop
Little
of
Shop of
Paris.
Horrors. And started in off Broadway because that was what
Yeah.
Howard liked.
Yeah.
He
So
liked
small.
small,
Yeah.
yeah, liked to keep things small, things that they tried to make big in the past, they just found didn't work.
Yeah.
It was a massive hit.
Yeah.
A massive hit. Everybody that they wanted to be in it, they got in it. And funnily enough, one name that was put forward to play Seymour that they said no to, and this was before he was a huge star, was Nathan Lane.
Oh my God.
I know. Yeah. These people that were around him at the time and were, obviously helping them get the show up and running and pick who, was going to play the characters on the stage. Yeah, they were like, oh, we know this guy, this up and coming guy, Nathan Lane, we think he'll be great. But Menken was like, oh, actually, I've already got a friend who I would really like to play Seymour, if that's okay. And they went with him. His name was Lee something. But anyway, massive hit,
Yeah.
huge hit. And they were able to get it on from off Broadway
Yeah.
to just off Broadway.
Yeah.
And again, Menken and Howard really, you know, stuck their teeth in and they were like, no, we are not making this show bigger.
No.
This is how we want to keep it.
Uh-huh.
We're not making it bigger. And, you know, they stuck to their guns and they, you know, they won. And then there was the opportunity to make it into a movie
Yeah.
because it had just been so huge.
Mm-hmm.
So again, they had this amazing stage show, and it was like, how do we bring this from being this amazing little theatre show to being a musical movie?
Mm-hmm.
And again, really had to fight on who they wanted to be in the film. I mean, the names that were getting thrown: Madonna,
Oh
Cyndi
God.
Lauper,
Oh,
David Bowie,
oh,
Tim Curry,
of course.
of course. And they're just like, no, 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 not happening.
No.
They managed to keep, you know, the main actress
Yeah.
from the stage show and bring her over. Saturday Night Live was obviously huge at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And Canada also had their own version of
Yes.
Saturday Night Live, which is
Right.
where John Candy came from.
Yeah.
So like obviously John Candy's in it. We've got Bill Murray, we've got Steve Martin, we've got the original actress from the stage show, and we've got the guy from Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Rick Moranis.
Yeah, who had become a bit famous, but not like famous, but people
No.
knew who he was. They
Yeah.
knew he could sing, they knew he could act, they loved how quirky he was, and they were like, yeah, he's definitely our
Oh,
guy.
he's perfect for Seymour.
Yeah. And then it was like, right, we've got our cast, we need a director.
Uh-huh.
And again, can't believe the names that were pitched. Martin Scorsese.
Oh God.
Don't know what they were thinking there,
Oh,
because it's not a mafia movie.
no.
Spielberg, which, yeah, I kind of get, but he's done musicals, and I really don't think musicals is his thing.
But he hadn't done it then.
No, thank God, because I really don't think
No.
I think he should just stay away from that. But they had a connection with Jim Henson's puppet show. Through Sesame Street.
Uh-huh.
They had met this puppeteer who helped them make the plant, the
Okay.
Audrey,
Yeah.
who'd
Yeah.
helped them make Audrey for the theatre. And he was like, Frank Oz?
Yeah.
And Frank Oz was like, I'm so in.
Mm-hmm.
This is so my cup of tea. This
Yeah.
is so this is so my thing. I will not ruin this movie. I will follow your lead. But yeah, like, I'm your guy. Movie was a huge success. Apart from the first showing, they ended up having to change the ending
Okay.
from the ending in the original play.
Okay.
Because moviegoers were just like, this isn't really our thing. So they had to go back to the drawing board with Frank Oz and come up with a different ending to
Right.
the film. It was very
No.
different.
Uh-huh.
Nothing like that had really ever been done before. But yeah, definitely finally put the two of them on the map as these two great collaborators that, yeah, we're going to have an amazing future together. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but yeah, there was obviously a crisis going on at the time that was really affecting, especially those that worked in the theatre, and that was obviously the AIDS crisis. They were getting famous while others were becoming unwell, and that was really affecting them.
So after the success of The Little Shop, Bill Loach, this is Howard's life partner.
Yes.
So he now comes into the picture. So he was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was adopted. He became an architect, and his uncle was living in New York, and he, said to him, "Come up, and I'll introduce you to some people." And yeah, so he put his name out there, met some people and whatnot, and got a job offer. So he packed his stuff and moved to New York City in 1980. Met Howard in a bar, and he's quoted as saying, "We locked eyes and just started talking. We just really clicked." And their first date was going to the Grammys together.
Oh, yes,
And it
yes.
was
I did
because
read that.
Howard and Menken were nominated for Little Shop of Horrors cast album.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I mean, how amazing is that?
Oh, I mean, that's just unreal.
So, Stuart, he was diagnosed with HIV, and he was one of the early ones.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it had been properly been given a
No,
name
it hadn't.
yet.
Yeah. So both Howard's sister and friend Nancy got in touch with Stuart when they got word that he was ill. And he was living in Connecticut at the time. He became sick before it was actually named, before people knew what it was, and when doctors were obviously trying to figure out why these men were dying.
Yeah.
And
I
at
think
this
it was
point,
just labeled as like the gay disease
cancer.
that,
It was
yeah,
gay cancer. That's what they officially called.
yeah.
That's what they initially called it. Yes, he wasn't doing very well when they got in touch, and he didn't really want to. He didn't want them to see how bad he was.
Mm-hmm.
So they told Howard, and Howard reached out. And yeah, and Howard spent a lot of time with Stuart in his last few weeks. I don't know if he was there when he died, but
Yeah.
he did visit regularly, which I thought was really nice, um,
Yeah.
because they did have a deep love for each other, and for how they met and what they did together when they first got to New York. They experienced a lot of firsts together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'm glad that he was with them at
Mm-hmm.
the end. And yeah, and lost other friends after that. Apparently, Stuart was the first that
Mm-hmm.
they knew personally, and then all of a sudden, they started hearing of other friends. One friend who I think was called David, who was really close in the same group,
Mm-hmm.
he had died, among others. So yeah. Now, after Little Shop, he then moves on to the next project, and this is when he is partnered with Marvin Hamlison. Hamlish. Yeah, Marvin Hamlish, who wrote A Chorus Line.
Yeah.
And I think, if I remember rightly, he did a James Bond as well.
Okay.
Something to do with a James Bond theme song. So he was
Big.
a bit, yeah. And I think he was bigger than Howard.
Oh,
Really.
yeah. Because
I,
chorus line was huge.
yeah.
Singular sensation. Every little step she takes.
So
Da-da-da-da-da.
they put the musical adaptation of a movie called Smile together.
Mm-hmm.
And David Geffen was one of the original producers,
Mm-hmm.
right? Obviously, Marvin is the composer slash songwriter, and Howard's the lyricist. They didn't work very well together.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they clashed, and they just didn't get each other.
Yeah.
So it was hard work and it was stressful. But this is also when we first hear about Jodie Benson.
Part of your world.
Yeah, that's it,
I
Holly.
meant to say. So many Disney songs have world in them.
Yeah, she was a massive fan of Chorus Line.
Mm-hmm.
She was a massive fan of Marvin's, but she also was a fan of Howard's.
Yeah.
So when this opportunity came up, she said, I had to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And she'd dabbled in a few things that hadn't really been successful. She hadn't had her
No.
big break yet.
No, she hadn't. So I think she was hoping that this might have been it.
Yeah.
She had 6 callbacks. And it was because, again, this was one of the frictions. Marvin wanted a singer who could be an actress,
Uh-huh.
whereas Howard wanted an actress who could sing. And he felt that Jodie was that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he got his way and she got the role. And like one of the songs is called Disneyland.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which she sings.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's there.
Yeah.
You know?
So the little note I've got is they loved Jodie and the song, but people hated the play.
Apparently, this should have been Howard's dream opportunity to make it on Broadway. He thought this was his ticket.
Yeah.
And he was really excited, really positive, and thought this was a hit.
Yeah.
So they'd done the workshop, and the workshop was a success. And apparently, it was an expensive production. And this is where Geffen pulls out.
Oh.
He doesn't believe that it's worth the money that Howard and Marvin needed spending on. So he left, he took his money and wouldn't give it to him. And apparently Howard was furious because obviously they were friends as well.
Yeah.
Eventually did manage to raise the money and yeah, and they got what they needed. They put it on Broadway. And even though the audience reaction seemed positive, when they got the reviews, it was bad.
Yeah.
Apparently, the New York Times in particular slated it. And yeah, and he did. He apparently went into a really dark place.
Shame.
But luckily, of all people, I never thought I would say this. But in this small part of the story, Katzenberg is the hero.
He's not the hero for long, but he is
No,
in
but
this
he is
part.
in this small part.
Yeah.
So he'd been introduced to Howard through David Geffen. David Geffen was one of his best friends. He also knew Schneider as well. He was introduced to him. So Jeffrey wrote to Howard, and in the documentary, you see a little bit of the letter. So it was written in 1986, asking him to come and work at Disney. So as in a paid employee.
Yeah.
Come, we'll pay you and be involved in various projects. And in the letter, he lists examples of projects that they have coming up that they think that he might want to work on. One of them is The Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
And another one is Mary Poppins.
What?
Yeah. It says Mary Poppins period project. So they could have possibly were thinking of doing the sequel back then.
Oh my God.
Yeah, a sequel or something to do with. But I know that Travers was still alive
Right,
and
okay.
she wasn't budging.
Yeah, she was like,
So
I'm
I
not
think they
doing this
were,
again.
yeah, we went into great depth in the
Yeah,
Mary Poppins episode. But yeah, obviously in the, there's more to do with this time at Disney on that Waking Sleeping Beauty documentary, which
yes.
those who are listening, if you haven't watched it, please, you need to. If you love the Renaissance era
Yeah,
and you grew up 80s and 90s, you will love this documentary.
yeah,
It's a really good insight into where the company was at that time and how close it was to not being what we know and us not getting these amazing films.
yeah,
Anyway, so when Howard first gets to Disney, he has a meeting with all the live action directors to do with the potential projects. One of them was a biopic about Tina Turner, and it was then called I, Tina.
yeah,
Later, it would be renamed to What's Love Got to Do with It?
yeah.
And Howard Hat is uncredited as a story draft, part of the story draft team.
Right, okay.
Okay. So even though the film gets made 8 years later,
Yeah,
but he really struggled to connect to these projects. He was not feeling the live action films. That wasn't what he wanted to do. So he asked to see the animation department. He says, I want to speak to them. And he believed that Broadway and animation could work together and wanted to be part of something great.
yeah.
Which now takes us to Little Mermaid.
Alan and Howard were clearly good partners, and Mencken understood how Howard worked and what his vision and passions were. At this point, Alan is kind of like, oh, I think I want to get out of theatre. Like this isn't working for me. But obviously gets asked by Schneider and Roy Disney, oh, can you come over?
Uh-huh.
We've got Howard. We'll want you as well. But yeah, the two of them definitely agreed. Musicals needed a comeback, and Disney animation needed a comeback.
Yeah.
And let's put the two together.
Obviously, me and Stephen have already, you know,
Yeah, you've done Little Mermaid,
we've done Little Mermaid, we've done Beauty
done
and
Beauty
the
and the
Beast,
Beast. Yeah,
and you joined us on Aladdin.
yeah,
So, in case anyone who's listening hasn't yet listened to those episodes, Howard Ashman and Alan Menken, are responsible for the music on Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. And they have began the music for Aladdin. In fact,
yeah.
they wrote a lot of songs together for Aladdin.
And Aladdin was actually Howard's passion
Yeah,
project.
that was what he initially wanted to do.
Yeah.
Um, However, 6 months before Beauty and the Beast was released, he died of AIDS on March 14th, 1991. He was only 40 years old. He worked right up.
Until he could.
Yeah, apparently he was still sort of trying to write at the hospice on Aladdin.
So there's this theatre talk that I mentioned earlier.
Uh-huh.
So the two people that are interviewing Menken's in front of his piano.
Uh-huh.
And the reason they've actually got him on the show is because he's just done Sister Act. So
Okay.
this is back, I think, in 2012, maybe,
Uh-huh.
this one that I watched. And the two people that are doing the program are like, we want to talk about Beauty and the Beast. We want to talk about Howard. We want to talk about how much we love this movie and we love the songs and blah, blah, blah. and, the fact that it was so sad that Howard didn't see, the final cut of the film
No.
and get to work on Aladdin. And like Mencken gets quite emotional at this point.
Oh, okay.
And he says how Beauty and the Beast, he felt mirrored Howard's life, that the petals falling off the rose was Howard running out of time.
Oh, yeah.
He said how when it came to, is it Elaine? No, not Elaine Page. Elaine Page is, what's the lady's name that does the voice of Belle? It's something Page, isn't it?
O'Hara.
Paige
O'Hara.
O'Hara.
Paige O'Hara.
Paige O'Hara.
You got the page right.
I got the page. I got the page. I'm like, Elaine Page? Paige O'Hara. O'Hara Page. So she's in the singing booth,
Uh-huh.
and they've got Howard listening on the phone.
Right.
And she's doing the new but a bit alarming.
Uh-huh.
And Howard's like, put her on the phone. Put Paige on the phone. And Menken's like, okay, Paige. Howard wants to speak to you. And he's like, Paige, do Barbara.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, I get you, Howard. I get what you want me to do here. So instead of it being new and a bit alarming, it's new and a bit alarming. So she goes up, she gives it the Barbara. So even up, like he's literally in bed, he is so ill, but he is like fully invested.
Yeah, because apparently during the recording and actually putting the music together with the orchestra and the singing and everything, he was struggling to be there all day and being in the studio for like 10 hours. He said he could only manage 5 to 6 hours.
Yeah.
And I think it was Schneider, he speaks about it, and he said, he was calling in sick. He was calling and saying, I can't come in today. And he said when he did eventually tell him that he had HIV, he was really angry because all those times that Howard called in sick, he said if he had been honest, he says they would have brought the recording to him.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have made him come to the studio.
Yeah.
Because he didn't live in New York at this point. Him and his partner had it was out of the city because they were building a home together. Bill had designed a house, and he said it was ironic that the house actually didn't get finished until just before he died, and Howard actually never really properly lived in it.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still got the house now or not. I hope so. But yeah, anyway, so that must have been one of those times that he was ill and couldn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
And so he gave his directions
like over the phone. But yeah, really sad, because it would have been, even though obviously I wouldn't change like a lot of the amazing movies and the soundtracks and everything that we have since then, but it would have been interesting to see what would have come if he hadn't gone, and what movies he would have wanted to have gotten involved in.
I know, because I don't want to take anything away from Menken.
No,
because what he goes on to do without Howard, is amazing.
Yeah,
and I can't wait to get to those films.
Yeah,
I mean, luckily we're not that far away now from getting to Hunchback and Hercules.
Yeah,
we've got a while before we get to Tangled, but I mean, like
you've got Pocahontas, Hunchback, and Hercules coming up.
So he was involved in Pocahontas.
Yeah.
Right.
I listen to the soundtrack of Oliver and Company,
Uh-huh.
Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin.
Yeah,
Like
and then
literally,
obviously others after,
of
but
course.
yeah,
But the Renaissance films are my childhood.
yeah,
And
and
yeah,
yeah, it's just
I
yeah, I
love
would,
that Howard and Menken were a part of that.
and it would have been lovely to have seen him finally get something on Broadway, and the fact that Beauty and the Beast is the one that becomes on, and he never saw that. He never
No,
saw his hit on Broadway.
so obviously we do end up with Little Mermaid on Broadway. We get Beauty and the Beast on Broadway. We get Aladdin on Broadway. Little Shop of Horrors is still running. Actually has a really famous drag artist um, playing the main character. Um, and her name is Jinx
Jinx Monsoon.
Monsoon. And I think Howard would have been really proud of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, what Ashman obviously, like we say, goes on to do, even though, he's lost basically his best friend,
you mean Menken?
Menken, sorry. He's lost his best friend, but he goes on to do some pretty amazing things
Yes.
and things that, we love. And again, like we say, don't really want to go into too much detail because you've still got those movies to come. But just to rattle off,
Yeah.
so Pocahontas, Hercules, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Tangled, Enchanted,
Yes.
and sort of out with Disney,
Uh-huh.
um, Sister Act on the stage, not the
Yeah.
movie. He went on to collaborate with David Schwartz, who did Wicked.
Oh,
And David Schwartz actually wanted to come away from music. He didn't want to do music anymore. He'd had enough.
yeah.
Things that were coming out, things that were being released on Broadway, movies, Disney, this is like, the late 70s, early 80s. He was like, oh, you know what, I've had enough of this. And actually went to get his PhD in psychology.
Okay.
And it was because of watching Beauty and the Beast. He went into the cinema to see Beauty and the Beast. And he was like, I've made a huge mistake. No, I, I'm not doing this. I'm sticking with music. This is what I
Okay.
need to do. And he went on to collaborate with Menken. I think it's Hunchback of Notre Dame they do
Uh-huh.
together. And like I say, David Schwartz is now most notably famous for Wicked.
Yeah.
And Menken obviously also went on to collaborate with Tim Rice.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim Rice went on to do amazing things after that,
Mm-hmm.
like Lion King and other things on Broadway and the West
Yeah, well,
End.
he does that Aida with Elton John, isn't it?
Yeah, and he also did King David with Menken,
Okay.
which I've never seen, but again, I've watched Menken playing. I find it really hard watching Menken playing his own songs. And I feel really bad because I love him so much.
Yeah.
But when he goes to do them himself, I find him very almost like a bad version and a non-gay version of Barry Manilow. Like, you know how
Yeah.
Barry Manilow kind of talks, oh Mandy, when you gave and you came without taking, and
Yes.
I sent you away, oh Mandy. And
Yeah.
Menken's very that
Yeah.
and kind of rushes through it instead of actually playing the song, he he plays through it like
I
really
know. I think it's
quickly.
because he knows he's not a singer.
Yeah, and like Barry Manilow, he's very typical, New York Jew. That's how
Yes.
he's been brought up. He can't hide the accent,
No.
when he talks, when he sings, and you know, he's just this little cute gray-haired Jewish guy in
I
front of a
know.
piano, and like he's lovely, but
Uh-huh.
I really find it
Cringe.
hard, yeah, when he's replaying the songs. And like we said in the last episode, he loves to sing that Aladdin song.
Proud of
That
your boy.
Proud of Your Boy.
Yeah.
And it's only when he sings it that I'm like, eh. But in that, which again, if any of you haven't seen it, you've got to go on YouTube and watch Alan Menken, Vienna 2022. Oh
Yeah.
my God, it is amazing.
Mhm.
It is all the songs for Disney that he has
That
been a
he's
part
done.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also touches on Little Shop of Horrors.
Yes.
But the guy that sings Proud of Your Boy on
Mhm.
that, I was actually crying
Okay.
because it that is how the song should be sung.
Yeah.
And when he sings it, you can actually vision it as part of Aladdin
Yeah.
when he sings it. And it
Yeah.
is a good song. And I get why Menken loves it.
Uh-huh.
I just don't love it when he sings
He
it.
sings it.
Yeah. And also in that award like ceremony, because that's what it is. They're this Vienna music industry
Yes.
orchestra are
Yeah.
basically acknowledging how amazing his contributions to music and film
Uh-huh.
and theatre have been, and they give him an award. And I think Howard would have loved this show. And I
Yeah.
think if he was there, he would especially have loved this guy called Drew Sarich. So I need to find out more about this guy because he sings Go the Distance and then he sings Pure Unfortunate Souls.
Yeah.
And oh my God,
Well,
it, it's mind blowing.
yeah.
And
I mean,
like
have you ever heard Howard's singing it?
I've seen like little clips, on YouTube where he's
Uh,
like, yeah, and I've seen clips of the woman who voiced Ursula and
yeah,
how she
Pat
was
Carroll.
like, yeah, and how she said to him, Howard, do you mind if I steal that? And he's
Yeah.
like, no, like
Yeah.
that is how I want it sung. But yeah, I just love it. I love how out and proud these movies are now and how they're being changed up, and how we have these amazing like African American actors coming on the scene and doing their take on the songs, and how you've got these amazing drag artists and people from the queer community coming in and doing their spin on it, and just how amazing it is.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, Howard Ashman and Alan Menken can really sit back and be like, yeah, we did something really good here.
I know. I just wish, obviously, Howard, had seen, that the three projects, you know, that he had done
Yeah,
for Disney and how successful, and the fact that really they change the way that Disney made um their animated movies.
yeah, and got them
And
to be a bit more risky and do things that they were maybe not as comfortable to do in the past. But
just allowing the fact that the you don't necessarily have to be a story person to contribute to the story being in a certain direction.
yeah,
And the fact that Howard's input was so respected.
yeah,
Katzenberg claims that there were two angels watching down on them that put their magic touch on every film that they made during that time.
mm-hmm.
Ashman being one and Walt Disney being the other.
Oh, that was nice of him to say,
Yeah, I know.
considering there was things he wanted to cut.
I know. Like part of your world.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah,
Howard must
listeners,
have
if
just
you
been
want to
like,
hear,
get
oh,
this guy out of my
I
face.
know. If you want to hear more about that story, then you'll need to listen to the Little Mermaid episode.
Yeah. Ugh.
But yeah, ultimately, his input is highly regarded
Yeah.
to the point where he is credited as a producer
Yeah.
for The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. Not Alan Menken.
No.
It's Howard. So I just wrote down some credits, awards, and tributes
Yeah.
of Howard. Oliver and Company, he was credited as the lyricist for,
Once upon a time in New York City.
yeah, which is sung by Huey Lewis. And yeah, The Little Mermaid, he's credited as lyricist, producer, and additional dialogue. He's also credited for a short called Cartoon All Stars to the Rescue, which was well known animated characters and they were put in a film for schools.
Oh,
And I think it was to do with like drugs and stuff like that. And
okay.
he was responsible for writing the lyrics to Wonderful Way to Say No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it did get an honorary award. I think it was an honorary Golden Globe award for because you know how they have all those categories.
Oh, yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was something to do with children, and this
Oh,
got that.
I'm really glad
Um,
that he got that.
yeah, Beauty and the Beast. He is credited as lyricist and executive producer, and on Aladdin, lyricist for Arabian Nights, Friend Like Me, and Prince Ali. Academy Awards, which is so funny because they announced the nominees for this year's Academy Awards today.
Oh, I've not seen it. I'll have to
Oh, it's
go on
basically
YouTube.
everyone that got nominated for the Globes. Nothing
Oh,
exciting. So awards won. So this is Academy Awards.
yes.
Um, was two. So obviously for Under the Sea.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm so shocked at. I'm so shocked it was under the sea
Yeah,
and
it was
not
Under
part
the
of your
Sea.
world.
I know they didn't put that forward.
Yeah.
It was Under the Sea and Kiss the Girl. They were the two that was nominated.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they won for Under the Sea and um Beauty and the Beast. 7 nominations he's had though altogether, because if you include Kiss the Girl, which he didn't
Uh-huh.
get, and then the Aladdin, that was two more because I think Friend Like Me and A Whole New World. No, Friend
Yes.
Like Me.
Yeah, and a
Who
whole
was
new
it?
world.
Yeah, because he didn't get that's it because A Whole New World got it. He didn't get it because he wrote Friend Like Me. Yeah, Friend
Yeah,
Like Me.
it was
Yeah,
Tim Rice that wrote Whole New World.
yeah. Um, and yeah, Once Upon a Time in New York City
I
was
know.
it.
Because I remember when you are speaking about the episode, where like I'm like thinking in my head, oh, well, he must have wrote that song that Bette Midler sings, which he
I know he
didn't.
didn't. No, I know he didn't. You would have thought.
So,
And I'm surprised that they weren't running in the same circles. If they were, it's not in any of the documentary because she was really,
oh, she was big,
but
like
like,
in the 70s and 80s.
I know, and like she was really into the music.
She played in gay nightclubs.
Yeah, I'm really surprised they didn't cross paths. But anyway, he's also won what's called a posthumous. That's what they call it when you've died and you win something.
Okay.
He's won a Laurence Olivier Award and five, three. He's won 5 Grammys altogether, three of which was after he died. So posthumous.
Okay.
Posthumous. Tributes. 2002 special edition Beauty and the Beast DVD was when Disney decided to add Human Again.
Yes, which I like. I like it.
Yeah,
We'll be human again. We'll be
we'll be
human
human again.
again. I like
Yeah,
it.
I mean, luckily, like,
And the wardrobe gets a singing part in it as well, which
I
I like.
know.
She does her, oh! I love
Yeah.
it.
I mean, it doesn't really add anything to the story. If
No.
anything, it just gives us another song to sing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was done to honor both Howard and Menken.
Yeah.
And yeah, which had been written and storyboarded, but was
Yeah.
cut. So yeah, they finished the animation and they managed to get um, the cast back in the booth to record bits.
Any like touch-ups on the
Yeah,
recordings? Yeah.
yeah. An album of Ashman singing was released, entitled Howard Sings Ashman. And this was in 2008.
Okay, I'll have to listen to that.
Yeah, so that's like for all his work. Because Menken mentioned in that Howard documentary how he had like the best Walkman.
Uh-huh.
And he always carried it around and it came with a little microphone. Because there's an incident when they're writing for Beauty and the Beast, and Howard couldn't get the mic to work properly, and he smashed this Walkman out of frustration. And Menken said he'd never seen him do that before, and he thought that it was because Howard wasn't happy with what Menken was doing in regards to make the writing of the songs and whatnot, because he said he was playing something to him. Obviously, later when Ashman tells Menken of his diagnosis of HIV, he realized that it was just frustration with the fact that this disease was now starting to take its toll and have an effect on him, and he was trying to hide it and whatnot and blah blah blah. Anyway, so this Walkman, so he always recorded himself singing the songs that he wrote, and I think that's what this album is. It's all those things put together. In the Waking Sleeping Beauty documentary, it's dedicated to Ashman, as well as Joe Ranft, Frank Wells, and Roy E. Disney. Because it's Don Hahn, who's the producer of Beauty and the Beast, and the director and producer of the Howard documentary. He made the Waking Sleeping Beauty documentary. So yeah. And the Howard documentary was released in 2018. He became a Disney legend in 2001. And at the end of Beauty and the Beast, a dedication to him reads, "To our friend Howard, who gave a mermaid her voice and a beast his soul, we will be forever grateful."
Yeah. I've got down the fact that Menken has won 8 Oscars, 11 Grammys, 7 Golden Globes, 1 Tony, so that makes him an EGOT.
Oh,
my man Menken, and he's a Disney legend.
Yeah.
Beauty and the Beast won for the song Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
At the Oscars. Bill Loach, Howard's partner, accepted the award, which had never been done before. A same-sex partner had never accepted an award on behalf of their partner before. And Disney were quite happy for him to do it. And Menken was quite happy to step aside and allow Bill to do that. Back to Menken, like I say, not going to touch on the Disney films because don't want any big spoilers, but I am absolutely in love with Spellbound.
Okay, this is the new one.
Yeah, so this has been released by Netflix. I love it. Absolutely love it. And watching the film and then getting to the credits at the end and seeing Menken's name, I was like screaming. And Matt was like, "Oh my God, you're such a freak." And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's Alan Menken. I can't believe it." No wonder the songs are so good. And it really is good. I've heard quite a lot of backlash about the film, which I'm so shocked at, but I don't know. I guess we're dealing with quite a hard audience at the minute. That's the only sort of thing I can
Well, if they're
maybe
anything like
say.
Stephen.
Yeah. But I loved it. Love the songs. I love how Menken was a part of the film, and
Does he
it
have
just
any other up and coming projects that you know of? Or
no, no, that's sort of all we've gotten up to at the minute. 'Cause, I mean, that's him 76 now.
you know how everyone has like a sound,
Yeah,
you know, like when you realize who the writer is, you think, oh yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that makes there, that does sound like I can tell a Manuel song,
Oh God.
right?
Yeah.
And an Elton John. And Menken does have a sound.
Oh, and I think me and you, being the movie freaks that we are and the Disney freaks that we are, we've got that ear and we're kind of
Yeah,
like, oh, wait
yeah,
a minute, I need to look this up because I'm getting Beauty and the Beast vibes here. He has done so many interviews, he's been on so many podcasts.
yeah,
If you are a fan, there's so much.
yeah,
And in each one, you learn something that you didn't know.
yeah,
So they're definitely worth watching. And he's a very interesting guy. And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So to end this podcast, I know we've probably said it before, but I really wish, you know, Howard could have seen what was accomplished from um his work at Disney.
mm-hmm.
And I would have loved to have seen what he would have done if he had lived. But luckily, he left us with three amazing Disney classics that are always favorites.
4 if we include Oliver and Company.
Oh yeah, or if we include Oliver and Company.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, okay, I know Little Shot wasn't like, you know, he thought it wasn't like a huge success when it first came out, but it's grown a cult following
Oh,
and it's, you know, still got fans and it still does runs in the theater, which is great.
yeah.
And so yeah. Well, thanks for joining me again.
No, I'm really happy to do this one.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed it. I've loved
And
rewatching the films and
uh-huh.
yeah, it's been good.
Yes, I'm sure you'll be back.
Mm-hmm.
And listeners, thank you for listening. I was going to say watching because you're not watching. Yes, thank you for listening. If you get a chance, please like, leave a review, please share to your friends who also like Disney. And we'd really appreciate it. And you can get in touch with us on the socials, you know, Insta, Threads. We're also on Blue Sky. So for those who are anti-meta at the minute, you can get in touch on Blue Sky and you can email, you know, the Jamie and Stephen show at outlook.com. Well, have a good evening, Holly.
I will. It's bedtime.
Yes, it's bedtime. Right. Bye.
Bye.